Hi, so today I'd like to share 3 misconceptions about enmeshment which pervade the literature on this topic. And I do believe that understanding the subtleties of these misconceptions will really help you if you are working towards individuating from an enmeshed family, or if you are working with clients on the concept of enmeshment. And when I've worked with clients who are struggling to heal from an enmeshed family system, who are struggling to set boundaries and individuate, these concepts have really helped to them understand enmeshment in a different way. And it's allowed them to move forward more clearly with more confidence about the path they need to take. So, the first misconception is not as much in the professional community as it is in the general public, but people will view enmeshed families as close. And they will say, well, closeness is good in families, right? It's good for a family to support one another, to be involved in each other's lives, to spend time together, right? To care about one another. So, there's really a confusion about what enmeshment is versus closeness. So enmeshed families might appear close, but probably a lot of the family members are hiding some of their feelings, perhaps hiding some of their activities, right? They are only presenting to the family unit what has been deemed appropriate by the family unit. And as I've talked about in my other videos on this topic, very often enmeshed families have 1 or 2 people who really dictate what is acceptable or what is not. Or the enmeshed family might circle around a person who has an addiction or a personality disorder, but individuals are not allowed to be who they are. And we can't actually be close to people if we're not open, if we're not able to be vulnerable with them, if we are not able to share who we truly are. So enmeshment and closeness are not the same in any way. In fact, enmeshment guarantees that there's not healthy closeness, that there's not true support. It's not true support of the individual and that person's passion in life or what they want to achieve, or really helping launch somebody into the world, right? Which our family systems, it's wonderful if the way they can view the children, and then as the children grow older, is like, how do I help launch this person into the world to be who they really are and bring their individual gifts to the world? Unfortunately, that's not the mode or message of an enmeshed family. Okay, misconception number 2 is that enmeshed families have no boundaries. This is simply not true. In fact, all systems have boundaries and all of us have boundaries. They just may not be healthy boundaries, right? But enmeshed families, you'll read in the literature, have permeable boundaries, which is partially true. They actually have enmeshed boundaries, which is where the term comes from. They have all mixed up. The boundaries are all molded together. And then there's cutoff, which I'm going to talk about later. But the boundaries are actually kind of rigid, right? So when people talk about permeable boundaries can actually be healthy, right? There are some relationships where it's good to have permeable boundaries. It's good to have flexibility. Enmeshed families often have no flexibility in the boundaries, right? It's like you're the caretaker. This is the person in the family who needs help. These are our values and don't deviate from them. This is the career you need to have. These are the relatives we're allowed to talk to, and those are the relatives we are not allowed to talk to. We are not allowed to share secrets from the family outside of the family unit. The boundaries are actually completely inflexible. They're rigid. So they're mushed up together where it might feel like it's permeable. And what is permeable? Let's explain that term. What is permeable is that people kind of feel each other's emotions, right? Particularly if you were the caretaker or the empath in the family, you would be able to sense and know what everybody's feeling, and you would feel it almost as if it's your own feeling. And in some enmeshed families, you're actually kind of told what to feel, and you need to follow and agree with the feelings that other people in the family are having about certain situations. So there's that kind of what you might call a permeability. But I actually believe it's a disservice for us to speak about it that way. That really what we would like to say is that the boundaries are mixed up, confused. The boundaries may not be appropriate to the roles in the family, meaning a child takes care of their parent or other hierarchies are mixed up. And then the boundaries of the family are incredibly rigid no matter what. So recognizing that enmeshed families do have boundaries and not healthy ones, that can also help you differentiate from the family system, begin to develop your own boundaries. And this one boundary about we don't talk about problems in the family is very common. And yes, nobody wants to go airing dirty laundry, and it isn't great to blast problems all over the world. Totally agree. But when that's put out as a very rigid boundary, people can't ask for help. That can actually facilitate abuse happening within households. It can mean that somebody who needs support that they're not getting from their family can't find it elsewhere. And that will lead us into misconception number 3. But before I go there, I'd like to share that in the boundary program that I'm launching this September, there's a significant amount of time dedicated to learning how to emotionally boundary yourself so that you're clear on which emotions are yours to take care of, which emotions are the other person's to take care of? Which ones are you responsible for? This is so confused in enmeshed families, and it takes some practice and training to really learn ways to not pick up on every emotion of every person around you, right? If you tend to be an absorber, it's really important to learn to shield yourself somewhat in a permeable way, right? Because we do relate to people by understanding their emotions. And if we're around somebody who's super, super anxious, it's hard not to pick some of that up, but there are degrees. And if you've been trained to be the person in the family who absorbs everybody else's emotion and then is supposed to take care of it, it will take training to unlearn that while keeping balance so you can remain in compassion but not be overwhelmed by emotion. So that is a little bit complicated. I think a little bit hard to really get into on a YouTube video, but I go into that in detail in the program that I'm launching, which is called the Ultimate Boundary Course. So keep your eye out for that. And then also I do have a free boundary personality quiz. I'll show the link here and I'll also link it below. And this is a quick quiz. It's 9 questions. It's short, but it really does highlight some self-concepts that might be getting in your way when you try to set reasonable boundaries and enforce them and hold to them. So, hoping that's useful for you. Okay, let's go to number 3. Okay, the third misconception is that cutoff is always part of an enmeshed family system. People will see cutoff as something different than the enmeshed family, but it's actually part of the enmeshed family. And there are a number of ways that cutoff manifests. So I want to go through that quickly with you. Okay, so if there is somebody within the family system who really wants to individuate, who has values that differ, it could be around gender role, it could be around sexuality, religion, even where the person wants to go in the world or what work they want to do or whether they're artistic or not. It could be all sorts of things. But a person who wants to individuate will probably be shamed by the family system and then shut out if they continue and if they don't compromise to continue to fit in. The family system will be very rigid and probably either shut them out completely or be so rude and so angry at the person that the person feels like they must leave and they can never go back. So in enmeshed families, there's almost always some relatives you've just never seen. It could be an uncle who had a fight with your mother 40 years ago and they haven't spoken since. So there'll be signs of true walls, cutoff, blockouts in enmeshed family systems, and it is part of the system. Okay, it is not that the person who's cut off, you might say, well, that person's not enmeshed, he's cut off. No, if that person is cut off, they are still enmeshed in one way or another, unless they've really gone through enormous recovery and it kind of no longer bothers them. But usually when there's that kind of anger and discord, both people are holding on to it. Both people are still part of the enmeshed family. So the people who are cut off are part of that enmeshed family. So that's an important thing to understand about enmeshed families. And then the other types of cutoff, people in enmeshed families will cut off certain emotions. So for example, if you took on that role that we talked about where you're the empath and you were the caretaker and you absorb everybody else's emotions, you might cut off your own emotions. You might not even be aware of those emotions that you have. So you've cut those off. Other people, if you are somebody who really has gone along with an enmeshed family system, you have perhaps cut off certain emotions that you weren't supposed to express in the family system. And this might even happen pre-verbal, so you have no memory of it. And you might say, no, I never felt that emotion. Probably that's not true. Most of us humans have access to almost all the emotions. But when things are cut off pre-verbally, the message in the family is so strong that you absorb that from others. You observe and absorb. So people are cut off from their emotions. They're also cut off from parts of themselves, right? If you want to be part of an enmeshed family and stay in it, you might cut off the part of yourself that wants to engage in something that's not like approved, right? Or if you're in a very traditional family and you were supposed to take the male gender role and you would really like to learn music and that's not approved of, you might just cut off that part of yourself. And the other type of cutoff, I spoke about this a little bit ago, is being cut off from support. Often if you're in an enmeshed family, you are cut off from support outside the family. And then as you grow up and you go through life, even if you separate from your enmeshed family, you may actually be somewhat cut off from friends, afraid to be vulnerable, feel like it is not safe to really show people who you are because you were teased or put down or shamed for who you really were. So that feeling of cut off from others and loneliness can exist for a long time. So again, if you're in a process of recovery from an enmeshed family or you're helping somebody, how can these concepts help? I think they might be able to help by reducing some guilt from separating emotionally to a certain degree from your family system, right? Like if you see enmeshment as closeness, you might feel really guilty or like there's something wrong with you that you don't want to be this close to other people because it's actually not closeness, it's invasive. And we already went through that. But understanding that might help you feel more confident in the path you're taking. It might also help you establish healthier boundaries. And healthy boundaries are actually what can help you not cut off. So if you're seeing that the only choice is to stay within an enmeshed family system or completely cut off, there's a middle ground that actually might be healthier for you. Now, how you get there is complicated, totally understand, but just to be open to the concept that if you're able to develop healthier emotional boundaries where you know what you're responsible for and what you're not, some of the shenanigans of an enmeshed family won't bother you as much. It won't get to you as much. Then you'll be able to respond more reasonably and protect yourself when needed more clearly and with more confidence. And then understanding that part of the recovery from an enmeshed family is not just distancing from them. It's definitely never getting them to change because that's a whole nother topic. But change is hard for everybody. Change is extremely hard for systems. And when you have a system or a person who doesn't want to change or doesn't think they need to change, anyway, just take that one off the table. So understanding the concept of cutoff can help you understand that part of the recovery is to no longer cut off from your own emotions, to no longer cut off from parts of yourself, and to begin to practice and experiment with being vulnerable with people who are safe, probably outside the family system, but developing more of a support system outside your family system. I really hope this has been helpful. I'm really curious to know what you think. Please do comment below. Let me know. Make sure to check out some of my other videos on this topic. I can link them at the end of this. And then also check out the boundary quiz. I think you'll enjoy it. All right. See you next week.